Hi, wherever you are across the Caribbean and around the world, this is Caribbean Bridges. And of course, we are linking up today because of the recent developments in St. Vincent and with several warnings over a long advance about possible evacuation. Well, it all happened on Thursday. The 4,049 foot La Soufriere volcano erupted on St. Vincent, and that was early on Friday. According to reports, it's in a more than a 2 mile high cloud of ash, which has gone not just over St. Vincent, but all the way to Barbados and neighboring islands. So, what we're going to do today is have a conversation with a number of people, particularly in light of the response, what we call to the rescue, CARICOM rallies for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And so I've assembled a number of people. Some of them are my friends, and some of them I'm meeting for the very first time. So let me start first by going to St. Vincent itself and to introduce you to my newest friend, Vinette Frederick. She's an attorney at law there, and she's been doing some online postings and, of course, having some conversations as well to give everybody a sense of what's happening there in St. Vincent. So welcome, Vinette, and let's hear what's the very latest.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm just apologizing. The air quality isn't great, so I find that I'm breathing better with my mask because the ash that we are experiencing is really insidious. You think that your house is airtight, but there's still ash on the furniture, ash on the floor, ash on the porch. It's constant, the ashfall in the wake of the explosive eruption over the last days. The latest that I've heard is that the last emission was at midday today. I was fortunate enough to catch one of the eruptions as it was starting, and from my parents' yard in Kingstown. And I would like to say that I am in the safe zone, the green zone to the south of the island. But the plume that really shook everyone yesterday um, went up between 20 and 30,000 feet in the air, and so was visible across the island. And it really was menacing. It's a surreal experience to be experiencing La Soufriere. I mean, I was 3 years old, 2 years old when it erupted in 79, so I have no memory of that. But here now, we have a situation where um, people have had to be evacuated. Some people, understandably, didn't leave because they had nowhere to leave to. And, some people, all they have is what they have where they are on the um, leeward and windward sides of the island in the north. And we have a situation where these are two of our most depressed part of our country, where rural and a lot of people don't have a lot. So I'm not tough on anybody because they hadn't left or felt that they needed to be there, even though I think the wise thing to do would have been to try to get out before. I mean, I have an 81-year-old aunt who's an amputee, and up until Thursday, she was telling me she wasn't leaving because she needed to see the fire pitch, like what happened in 79. And, so we have a scenario where the older folks were had to dislodge from the homes that they have known all their lives. But unfortunately, many people are now in St. Vincent, in Kingstown, and in the constituencies of South Leeward and East Kingstown, Central Kingstown, West Kingstown. And I live right across the road from a shelter. And what has been happening is that people have really taken the lead because of social media and technology, and the fact that we are still able to be connected. Our utility in the form of our internet connectivity hasn't been disrupted. So we are able to communicate, and people are expressing their needs. And, Vincentians are coming out um, really from a community level, to hold on to one another and do what we can. Some people are doing it privately with no fanfare. People are connecting across all sorts of lines. In the last 48 hours, I've heard from childhood friends. I've heard from people I went to university with, Cave Hill, law school, Duke of Edinburgh Award, Girl Guides. I mean, like literally every aspect of my life over the last 44 years, people have touched base because this is a disaster unlike any other. Interestingly, I've been getting the question, why do I live on an island with a volcano? Why didn't I think of moving? The truth is, you're born here, you understand soufre, you appreciate that it's a volcano, that it isn't dormant. St. Vincent is volcanic, and it's one of the things that we boast about our fertility of the Mespo Valley, the fact that it's a extinct crater. So we know that we're a volcanic island, and so we have a healthy respect for La Soufrière. That having been said, it's been really emotional to go through seeing people struggle and the shock of what tons and tons of ashfall mean in your logistics and your day to day. I mean, the
Wow.
burning eyes. So for me,
Yeah.
that has been the most telling thing. I think I'm somebody who is very resilient, but I was moved to tears yesterday when I saw the
Yeah.
plumes, billowing in the air and what it means for us. It's a huge setback. Two positives that I take away is because of the coronavirus, people aren't wary about wearing masks. So telling people to mask up to protect themselves because of the ash is
Mm.
not something that people balk at because we're already wearing masks. And you know, Vincentians care for one another, even if we may differ on all sorts of bases. When it comes down to life and limb, people are reaching out, and I feel encouraged and buoyed by that across the mile.
Excellent, excellent point to be made, coming from you. And I like the fact that you've really given us a good sense of what the reaction has been in the last 48 hours in particular. Well, you've done a job online, but I know that Dougie DeFreitas, my old friend, has done a job himself on his radio station, Nice FM. So let me bring Dougie in here. Dougie, it's good to see you after such a long time. Not happy about the circumstances, but tell me what's going on as you see it.
Well, let me say a good day to each and every one. And I trust that what is happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines would be a lesson to CARICOM, because CARICOM, in many ways, has never functioned in the way that it should function. But that something like this happening in a space of 42 years, and this explosion of the volcano is at a magnitude that I don't think most people expected, but I've been always warning and that it would happen and that we are ill prepared for this, what is happening at this point in time. Vinit would know that I have been speaking in my commentaries and I've been warning the government. I've been ridiculed because of my stance that I take on being prepared, because disaster preparedness is exactly what it says, disaster preparedness. This is a disaster of a magnitude that will be progressive because of the ash, the capacity of us having ash falling on us for the whole week coming and maybe more.
Mhm.
And whilst we may not have pyroclastic flows because of the nature of our volcano, as expressed by Professor Dr. Richard Robinson, who is a Vincentian and who came out of the area from where the volcano is, basically his parents are from out there. And it tells you that, and he's been very on spot. I am kind of angry. I'm kind of angry with the government because we saw this coming. We had effusive eruption for over a week, and we have had this problem with this volcano showing seismic activity since in October. They officially speak about it for November, but the elections were coming, and elections were more important to the government then than having us prepared. I have been calling for the government to be prepared to create areas for evacuation in the context of COVID-19 and the implications for having persons together in an evacuation center that we are not prepared for. I've been asking that the old Annisvale Airport Strip be prepared, where we could get 10 cities and tents coming from the Southern Command of the U.S. Army. I know what is the capacity. Prepare, Julian, I sometimes I get more in trouble speaking, but everybody knows me that I am not afraid to speak what I have to speak.
Yes.
So what is
Dougie,
happening now?
Yeah.
What is happening now is that, like Vince said, Vincentians, we are from Hiruna, home of the blessed. Home of the blessed. We are blessed with a volcano that gives us fertility. Everything in life is compromised. So you can't have the kind of fertile land what St Vincent and the Grenadines had for years, that had tremendous agricultural output. It's all because of the volcano. We couldn't have 33 beautiful little islands called the Grenadines if they were not from the volcanic activities over the historical years that me and you don't know about, Julian. That we only come and see it there in its splendor. So we are from Hiruna, home of the blessed. I only speak in my opening statement about my vexation because I think that people are in shelters and we are ill prepared and people are very uncomfortable. We know they can never be comfortable as if they're in their home, but there are things that were never in place and should have been. And the Prime Minister should have called evacuation the morning. I could have heard the apprehension in Dr. Robinson's voice when he was speaking with Prime Minister Gonzalez at a particular time in the morning, as if to say, you could hear him, you could feel it in your spirit. Why don't you just call evacuation now? They wait until 4 hours after, and then gets into the night, and then, it's chaotic. I was on the radio this morning appealing for them to go and remove 60 persons from Oria right under the volcano, but the Coast Guard, thank God, went and removed them. But those persons got trapped because the road collapsed. And but those are the issues of which I would focus on, because it's not a nice feeling. And where we are now, all of us in St Vincent and the Grenadines are trapped in a bubble of ashes. In a bubble. We like you inside a bubble.
Okay.
All of
Dougie,
us.
I'm gonna give you a chance to come back and talk about the very first statement you made, and you said that this was a lesson for CARICOM. But let me go for more reaction, though. Let me go to people in the diaspora. Atiba Williams is in North America, and he, of course, is the PR for the St. Vincent, or the SVG Relief Inc. over there, and they've been mobilized for a long time, long before the eruption, in fact. So, Atiba, first reaction to what's happened and what's happening on your side.
Hi, good evening to the panelists and everyone watching. Well, our reaction to this is to respond to our homeland immediately. We had started activation since January of this year. Since the effusive eruption started in November, we really got into the mood of start shipping stuff to St. Vincent and Grenadines to help out with this effort. To date, we have sent 2 shipments so far with our relief supplies already. And as of yesterday, what was the last shipment that went, should be getting in the next 10 days in St. Vincent. We are planning a series of relief efforts here, and we'll be starting tomorrow. We'll be doing a press conference to update the USA and everything as to what's taking place and how exactly we are going to respond to this disaster. We have set up a relief drive next week, Saturday, which we'll be doing at the Friends of Crown Heights, 671 Prospect Place in Brooklyn. And there will be a GoFundMe page set up also so people can donate monies and stuff like that because this is a real serious disaster and we expected it, but we was just waiting until to really kick into high gear, and now we are in it. We are responding. We are ready and raring to assist in a number of. I've been on my phone all day meetings since the eruption. We hardly sleep up in New York. I know my friends and our colleagues in Canada and England also. We normally get together on a platform, so we are coordinating a whole diaspora relief. So it's not just the USA; it will be Canada and England also doing a whole united front to assist St Vincent the Grenadines with this magnitude of disaster.
Atiba, I was going to prompt you about referring to the other sectors of the global community of Vincentians, but you did that for me, so thank you. Let me go to the next door, your neighbor or your immediate neighbor, although I should say maybe St. Lucia is closer than Barbados is. But Barbados is dark by day. Apparently the sun is shut out like in a biblical story, and that's where Tisha Hines is, and she's here to tell us exactly what is the situation and reaction in Barbados.
Well, good evening, Julian, and hello to everybody on the panel, those of you viewing as well. Barbadians really woke up this morning to gray skies, literally and figuratively, and late yesterday we heard about the explosions. Well, early on we were doing reports. We've been covering, as many of the others said, from a few weeks ago, intensely and really following over the last few days. So when we heard about the eruption, the first one that really happened yesterday, we started to get some information that we could expect some of the plume, the ash to come this way. It was maybe just after 11 or so that we started seeing projections. I don't think anybody in Barbados really could have expected what we woke up to this morning, particularly in the northern and central areas of Barbados. We really woke up to videos on social media and being passed around of what seemed to be gray snow falling in the north of the island. It's been a gloomy day across the island all after 8, 9, 10 o'clock this morning. The street lights were still on. As you would know, they usually go off when it is enough light outside for them to go off. So they go off and come on automatically. The street lights in some districts have been on all day. It's been very dark, getting a little lighter at some particular parts of the day, but generally it has been dark, gloomy, and very gray skies all across Barbados all day today. So there's been a lot happening. A lot of people expectedly have been a little nervous about what the prospects can be. And even for me, I was a little anxious in seeing what was happening outside, if only because of how heavy the ashfall has been. And I'm in the eastern side of the island. I'm in St. Philip, and it's very, very thick even here in St. Philip. So you can just imagine the northern and central parts of the island, what it looks like. And I would have shared videos as well when I came out of my home and looked at the vehicle, and just to see all of it. It definitely has been jarring, but our prayers really have been with the people of St. Vincent. Like Vanette said earlier when she started, through COVID-19, we really have become accustomed to wearing the masks. So saying to Barbadians, don't come out unless you have your masks and stuff like that, really hasn't been difficult. I think where we have the challenges is since the last lockdown, Sundays really have been off the table for us in terms of doing business. And so a lot of Barbadians usually use Saturday to get out, to do a lot of their shopping, chores, and things of that nature. So people were still trying to move around in the midst of all of this. But to get on the highways and byways across Barbados today, most people had to turn on their headlamps to even move around in the country. So it definitely has been, there has been a big impact here in Barbados as well. And a lot of us are very, very anxious. But I think the majority of us are concerned about the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we really want to make sure that they are safe.
And I might add as well that your airport is shut down, and the civil aviation authorities between Trinidad and Barbados and so on are working, of course, monitoring the airspace and deciding when the airspace will be open up again.
That's right. We had a press conference just around 2 o'clock this afternoon, led by the Minister of Tourism. And, she came on with the Director of Civil Aviation and the head of the CEO of the Grantley Adams International Airport to talk about that, to speak about the fact that we've shut down the airspace and what that will mean. She mentioned that owing to the pandemic, we've had quite a few reduced flights. She did mention there are about 7 flights that have been displaced because of the closures over the weekend, and they will closely monitor it. I also had occasion yesterday to speak with a gentleman who was the Director of Civil Aviation in Barbados back in 1979 when there was the last eruption. And all that he described, it's pretty much the same as what we are seeing now, the ashfall, and really just kind of getting people to be careful about moving around and taking care of themselves, and just a lot of concern because of, what it looks like, even more so than the impact.
Let me turn to another friend of mine. This time it's Frankie Michael. He's from Antigua and Barbuda originally. He spent a long time in Montserrat, and a major part of that time was living with a volcano after the eruptions back in 1995. He was literally there at the beginning, stayed on for 4 years until things cooled down, and he headed off to Barbados, where he's been ever since. So Frankie, you have the job of really alerting people. I don't know if alerting is the right word, but at least sensitizing people to the potential that this is going to be there for the long haul.
Yes, thank you very much, Julian. But let me quickly, before my friends in the British Virgin Islands and Grenada get upset with you, remind you that after Montserrat, it was British Virgin Islands for a few years and Grenada before Barbados. Okay?
There you go.
But yes, if we reflect on what is happening now, Julian, and of course, our great concern is with the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and their connections across the world. The reality of this situation, when I was in Montserrat, and I was directly responsible for the operational response in Montserrat for the first 4 years of the crisis, I was director of the Emergency Operations Center and permanently at the same time with responsibility for disaster management. So I had a front row seat. What we have to appreciate now, and of course, it is all driven by the scientific knowledge. And we've had Professor Richie Robertson talk before, and I've worked very, very closely over the years. The judgment as to what is likely to happen scientifically is critical. So that means that we have to listen very closely to the scientists. Thankfully, the region now has volcanologists and seismologists of significant experience. I can just think that as a result of the crisis in Montserrat, one of the realities that is a benefit to the region is that there are at least 3 Montserratians that I'm aware of now who are involved in seismic work. So that's a big plus for the region coming out of what happened in Montserrat, just as I believe there's a connection between the 70th eruption and Professor Robertson's choice of career. Now, when we look at it right now, what we have happening, Julian, is evacuation. Now, in reality, that's the first part of the challenge responding to the volcanic crisis. We're getting into the phase of temporary relocation, and we've heard some discussion about issues and challenges that appear to have arisen between evacuation and temporary relocation already. But then down the road, Julian, and again, in terms of time scale, it all depends on how it unfolds. There's going to be management challenges associated either with return to the original areas of occupancy or restricted occupancy. We will have that reoccupancy challenge. And if we can't reoccupy, we're going to have a redevelopment challenge. In other words, let us all recognize and accept that the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as the people of Montserrat have had to face, it is a massive management challenge. We also have to recognize that we are looking at leadership at perhaps 4 levels. We're looking at the strategic leadership, which will occur at the national political level and regional political level. We're looking at leadership at that level as absolutely critical. We're looking at leadership in country at the operational level as absolutely critical. We're looking at tactical leadership for the everyday things that have to be done. And we're looking at household leadership for what families have to do. So I'm just trying to set the scene here so that all of us recognize and appreciate, while the dramatic explosion of the volcano catches our eye and the ash has caught us in Barbados today can bring us a lot of discomfort, thinking about the future of our neighboring country, a lot of planning, a lot of coordination, a lot of communications, a lot of stakeholder engagement, all of those things are going to have to be entered into systematically, Julian. Now, I'm aware that SEDIMA already has the mechanisms kicking in. I'm aware that the Prime Minister Gonzalez and his cabinet are in close connection with regional neighbors. I am just emphasizing for all of us that in a way we all have a part to play. And particularly for our colleagues in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I am sure now that everyone there recognizes that it's all sectors, public sector, private sector, NGO sector, everybody has a role to play. But what is absolutely critical is the leadership and coordination at all of those levels. And I really am hoping that as we go forward, learning from the Montserrat experience, and I wouldn't for one moment suggest that we got everything right in Montserrat, but we got a lot of things right. And in a way, yes, we have smaller numbers, and no, we didn't have COVID. But what we didn't have was a lot of notice before we had the first signs of volcanic activity. So we had to jump into it immediately. The ash started falling one afternoon, and that was it with no prior warning and notice. So I'm saying there's a lot we can learn from what happened in Montserrat, and I'm hoping that as time passes, at every level, the family, the tactical, the operational, the strategic, that we will learn those lessons and apply them with the requisite adaptation for the realities of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I'll leave it there for the moment.
All right, we'll come back to you, Frankie, because we need to give some more help here, particularly based on your experiences. Let me remind you, I'm Julian Rogers. I'm in Kingston, Jamaica. This is Caribbean Bridges, and we're taking a look at the situation in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and of course, the CARICOM response that is coming from governments and agencies and ordinary people as well. And I want to go back. So before I do that, let me remind you, of course, that you can always send a message to us here on WhatsApp. The WhatsApp number is posted, and we'll be happy, of course, to pose questions or share those questions with the people we have on the panel. I want to get back to Vinette Frederick, who is in Kingstown. I want to ask you, Vinette, give people a sense of the size of St. Vincent and the impact this particular event is having on the island. What are we talking about here, particularly where Frankie talks about bringing people back and relocation, etc.? What are the possibilities? Yes. What's the reality? Or do we send people off to every other Grenadine island?
You know, I appreciate everything that the panelist, Frankie, just everything he articulated. I appreciated fully. What we have, and I am speaking, of course, as a citizen who is responding to what the management is doing to communicate to its citizenry about in this time of national and natural disaster. We were told that the numbers that would have to be evacuated, St. Vincent is 134 square miles, and we would have to evacuate upwards of between 12 and 20,000 people. That was a broad figure that was floated. And NEMO went about from since January having a number of press conferences and preparing to say, giving bulletins I think we've had 55 bulletins since January, essentially just telling people, be prepared, be prepared, be prepared. But the issue for me has been the buy-in from the public. Because yes, I was hearing be prepared, and I would be somebody who would prepare, given my background. But whether on the ground, the people who are most affected understood or had the tools with which to prepare is a question that I think we would look back at and have to answer in the months that follow, because I appreciate that this is not no for no, okay, these volcanoes gonna go for next week and then we're good to go. No, 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 no. We already see that Vincentians are in this for the long haul and would have to take decisions as families, communities, um, to determine how we adjust, especially as we are also in a pandemic. Um, so what we were told is be prepared at within 24 hours to relocate or to be evacuated. And generally, I would hazard a guess to say, from my appreciation of what's happening on social media, that the country is entirely grateful to the seismic unit and entirely grateful to our son of the soil, Professor Robertson, because he and his team have been so spot on and so genuine and truthful about what was going to happen. So now you find that that is who the public wants to hear from first and foremost. We want to hear from the seismic unit. We want to hear from NEMO. And where the challenges have arisen is in the communication, because you have all sorts of different demographics communicating. You have all sorts of fake news as well. I mean, people passing around images from 3 years ago in other countries of things that fell out of the road, things that rolled onto houses and things, just sort of creating a little panic and unease among the population. And for me, it is those areas that we have to be aware of, except that I am a bit more hopeful, because of how largely responsible the average Vincentian has been in articulating what they are going through the use of social media. So I am a little bit more hopeful that those who have to provide will be held accountable to provide and will know from the population how we feel about what's happening and what is not happening, and will be able to respond accordingly, because this is a work in progress. It's happening and unfolding, and we have to respond. So I am more hopeful and more problem solver approach oriented. I don't think now is the time simply to complain. We got to fix it and move on and continue to pull people up and encourage people who are devastated by what's going on, to let them know that we may be down, but we're certainly not out, and St. Vincent will rise again. Whatever the future brings, of faith will see us through.
Right. Let me go to Dougie and challenge him. I know, Dougie, normally we say you don't ask a lady her age, but I'm just going to ask you if you were around for 79.
I actually was not in St. Vincent. I left 2 or 3 days before because my first daughter was being born in New York, and I left and it exploded after. But I was here for all the rumblings and some of the preparations and so forth that was around. So I was not here when it actually exploded.
But you're at a point where you can make any comparison at all?
Well, judging from the ash that we are seeing right now in the southern part of the country, when I came back, what, I think about 3 months after, I hardly saw any ashes in Kingston. I can tell you now, with the kind of ash that we are witnessing right now, where we have at least an inch of ash on the ground in the southern part of the country. I'm certain that you have about 4 to 5 inches in places like Georgetown and the western, northeastern side of the country. So it must be phenomenal. As I told you, visibility in the southern part of the island for the whole of the day today was anything maximum about 300 yards from my vantage point. And you know where I live at Dorset Hill. I normally could see Young Island. I'm now just beginning to see Young Island whilst you were speaking. So for the whole day, I couldn't see more than maybe 200, 250 yards. That tells you the way we've been blanketed out. I mean, just to look at what happened with the volcano and look at the rise of the plumes. It went up to 51,000 feet in the air. And where Vinette is in Kingston, in the basin of Kingston, she could see it as if it's just standing right in her face, like a giant, So it's not surprising that Barbados, with the countervailing winds, that Barbados would be also blanketed out, because when you look at the wind pattern, and being on radio, as you know, we do weather and so forth, we understand and study those things. I'm not surprised that Barbados is as if they're just an extension of St. Vincent when they come to ashes.
Dougie, I want to press you though. I come back to the geographic question, in fact, of the relocation. In other words, should people ever consider going back into any of those areas again?
Yes, it will happen. It will happen.
Why?
Because look, the way the culture of St. Vincent and the Grenadines is, the landmass, the way it is, the high, 45% of our agricultural producers produce in the red zone. Even though Mesopotamia is the valley of the green gold, and it's as an extinct crater, 45% of our agricultural produce is produced in the red zone. The land is fertile. People will rebuild. People will and you would say that. But what we have to be careful is the kinds of infrastructure that we want to put. And I'd say in this, and I know Vinette probably don't want me to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway, because I am tired of we saying, push something under the rug because it is not the right time. Well, when is not the right time for politicians to make the same mistake that they've been making all the time? Take, for instance, Georgetown is a red zone. Everybody knows it's a red zone. The government named it a red zone. Yet we take millions and millions of dollars and put a hospital right in Georgetown. It doesn't make any sense. We complained when they were going to do it. They didn't want to. Now, I am not so certain what's the status of the hospital right now. I don't know if it's damaged, but I know for sure with the amount of dust that we have in Georgetown, the machines cannot be used. They probably would have to replace them, because you can't take dialysis machine, putting stuff in people's bloodstream that you're not so certain if you have gotten rid of all the impediments that would be in that situation. So I'm upset about those things. I know that we are a people, and we as a people, whether politics or not, we normally come together still to deal with our humanity and the things that are necessary, and those things will be done. But I'm very grateful for our friend that was in Montserrat, because I know he would know Bobby Martin, which is my good friend who got killed, not from a hurricane. Mm-hmm. And I have friends up there who are in the area of seismic. But so I know what to expect. And I know we have to manage where we are now. So complaining won't change the fact that these management things have to go into place. I am being adamant that we were ill prepared and we had enough warning. We're not like Montserrat where we weren't warned. We were warned and we did not prepare the way we should have been prepared. We just didn't do it. The government was lethargic. And I don't know if they understand what they would find themselves into, and the people of St Vincent the Grenadines would find themselves into. I mean, it was almost ludicrous to see how we just waiting and see. We had the science telling us, look, Dr. Richard Robertson said this, and these are the three words. This is your warning. That's a week ago, This is your warning.
All right. Let me. As you talk about the government, Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonzalez was making the rounds early today, and we managed to capture some of that movement. So let's share and hear exactly what he was telling people today.
13 million cubic meters of material which had formed the dome, approximately, in the volume, which has been blown away. And new material is also coming up from in the volcano. And fortunately, a lot of the material has gone to the sea. But a lot is here, and a lot. I was just talking to Mia Mapley, the PM of Barbados, and a lot has reached Barbados. And we don't know how long this spewing is going to take place. The seismologists don't know, in fact, what the work they're doing. They're collecting samples. And through their testing, they're going to be able to give us some indication as to what do they think. Of course, it's not a precise science when you're doing these prognoses. This cleaning up is going to be massive, as you can see already. This is not. Remember this. The weight of this and the nature of this. Mashing up houses already, crashing the roofs, crashing the windows and doors. They're getting inside of the houses. It's a very serious problem. And the cleaning up of this alone is going to be massive.
So there you've got the Prime Minister, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, making the rounds early today. Of course, he was seen a couple of days ago in tears at the very prospect of the damage to his country, and warmed by the responses coming from the rest of the Caribbean community. Let me go back to Franklin Michael in Barbados. He talked a great deal about what was really to be considered in the long haul. Frankie, I think you need to continue to give us some lessons here.
Okay, Julian, let's pick something that's immediate right now. Shelters. We're talking roughly 50 shelters managed by the government, that is, if I have my information from this distance correct. Just about 50 shelters, about 3,000 shelteries. Now, shelter management, depending on the duration of the evacuation, is going to prove one of the biggest short-term challenges for the country. And let me just highlight a few points. Now, first of all, if we take three big S's at shelters: survival, safety, security. And each of those have major implications from a leadership, management, teamwork, and coordination perspective. Not the moment for us to go into the details, but I'm just highlighting it so that the enormity of the challenge and the areas of emphasis can be appreciated by everyone who's listening to us, watching us, or who may see this later. Then we get into questions of well-being and welfare. We look at things like food and sanitation. Are there going to be enough showers for people to be able to use showers regularly? Is the water supply going to be enough that everyone will be able to have access to running water? Remember, this is a COVID environment now. We're still going to be talking about washing hands. We're still going to be talking about social distance. Those things are going to affect shelter management. What about welfare issues, particularly emotional issues? If families are separated and people have to go into different shelters. Now, I have to speak with caution because I have not physically inspected the shelters myself. So I'm not going to say that these are features that I'm missing or anything like that. I'm just saying these are things that must be considered. When people go to shelters, especially when families are separated, you can have some very serious emotional challenges emerging. You have in addition to the challenges of the emotions there, you have questions of gender separation. At what age ensure that males and females, there's a genuine separation between men, boys, women who are unrelated? Can you keep family groups together? Can you keep husband and wives and young children together, especially if this is going to be a long haul arrangement? So those are the things that I'm hoping are being addressed, as we speak, and have been addressed to some extent in planning. I have not been involved, let me say from the beginning, I have not been involved in any of the planning that has taken place in St Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm always available to assist my colleagues anywhere in the region at any time. So I have absolutely no difficulty sharing ideas or thoughts. But I just want to make the point, I have not been involved. So I would not for one moment suggest that I've been involved. I'm aware of what the plans are on the ground. So I'm trying to speak in a way that is not in any way an indictment, anything that's happening. That's not what my intention is. It's just to share the lessons of experience. Now, let us remember, for example, one of the biggest challenges you can have at shelters, and I hesitate to bring it up because, it's polite company, so to speak. Toilets. You would not believe the problems you could have if you take people to live, so to speak, 24 hours a day in a situation in which the toilets were not designed for the numbers of people that are to be using the toilets. So that's one problem that has to be looked at immediately, in my view, if it hasn't been addressed already. Because once you have people there longer than a couple of days, let's say if you're using a church building, normally you might have, a few people going out to use the toilet during a meeting, 4 or 5 or 6 people using it during one evening. Now you have maybe 30 people occupying that building, living there 24/7. That's a different kind of challenge. So I'm just pointing to that. When people are at shelters, what's happening to them? They're concerns about their income. They're concerns about how are they going to make a living. If they're tradespeople, if they're farmers. I heard, for example, that 45% of production comes from the red zone. Now, what's going to happen to the income of people who would normally be self-employed through agriculture? And if they're at shelters and they see themselves as rapidly becoming penniless, that's going to be a monumental challenge. So what I'm saying is that all of these things, Julian, I'm hoping that we can address them systematically from the regional all the way down to the family level, and we can coordinate what is going to be required, because the management challenge, as I keep saying, is only beginning.
Well, that is a very important heads up, Frankie. And talk about heads up, the man who is credited with really giving a proper warning is none other than the Professor Robertson. He's Vinci, and he's been on the ground for quite some time. And we got a chance to check in with him earlier today as he made his rounds.
Bear in mind that this is what's going to happen over the next few weeks, probably longer, and therefore we need to remain out of the areas that have been evacuated. It's hard. It's the hardest thing to make interpretation of what's happening. We're glad that most people, if not all, have gotten out of harm's way, because that's the key thing that we do. And really, it's really now to hold steady, keep looking at what is happening, respond to it as necessary. And that's what the observatory is going to do. Give the advice as much as we can. I hope people listen to it and respond to it. But certainly we are at the early stage of an explosive eruption, people. And therefore it means that we need to be vigilant. We might have more of the same. It might be bigger. The northern part of the volcano itself, and the northern part of St Vincent is in the most dangerous areas. The yellow and the green areas are still safe, so stay in those safe areas. The areas that have been evacuated, stay out of them. Don't come sightseeing, don't do that kind of thing. Stay far. There are places you could stay far from and look at this beautiful eruption plume that's going up.
That's very interesting, Frank. I want to come back to you quickly, only because one of the things I learned about the Montserrat experience is how very smart Montserratians became based on the information and the guidance and the education of the Montserrat Observatory. You could talk to any Montserratian who could tell you exactly what a pyroclastic flow was, and they go down all the technical terms, but it was clear that everybody learned and understood what was happening.
We got a lot of seismologists out of the crisis, Julian, and people who really became very knowledgeable very quickly. But that illustrates another point that I wanted to make if I had the opportunity with the time that's left. Communications. Part of what happened in Montserrat, just as you had, and as I keep saying, Richie Robertson was part of it and a big part of it, managed to build relationships between the affected communities and the scientists very quickly. In other words, briefings in the affected communities by the scientists were those were routine parts of the communication effort. The scientists were also, those days, we didn't have social media the way we have it now and so on, but the scientists were part of all of our efforts on radio in particular. There wasn't much TV available to us at that point. The scientists were a big part of the communication effort. Our shelter managers, our district committee chairpersons, all of them were closely integrated. The communication that was, the information that was provided, there was information tailored to specific needs, but it was fundamentally the same scientific information being shared with everybody, just written or spoken in a way that it would be easier to understand if you didn't have the scientific background. So I'm saying, I'm hoping, as I'm seeing here, that involvement in communication with the scientists, that will continue. But more particularly, that key officials, and when I say key officials, across all sectors, we had arrangements, for example, where we had liaison persons from the Emergency Operations Center to the private sector representatives, the NGO representatives, churches, and so on. So again, you had somebody that if you're a pastor and you wanted to get a question answered, you knew who your liaison person was. You could go directly to that person and get information all the time. So those are the things that I'm hoping are going to be put in place to make life a lot easier for everyone, because the communication of accurate, and especially in this era when, as you now know, Julian, and I know, virtually everybody's a broadcaster, so to speak, because of social media. But it does not mean that everyone who can broadcast information is broadcasting accurate information, is broadcasting relevant information, or presenting the information in a timely manner. So those are the communications challenges in addition to shelters. And I'm just picking two areas that I hope we will continue to work on and we will continue to address. One of the things that was particularly helpful, and in fact, my wife reminded me today, is that we had produced fairly early on in the crisis in Surat. The volcano started July 18th, and by the end of November, beginning of December, every household in Montserrat had what was called a residence guide to evacuation. And they were distributed to each household. In other words, tonight and tell you, I know for a fact that at least one copy of that document went to every household. Again, I know we're dealing with smaller numbers, but it's the principle that I'm also getting at. The information that families needed to know precisely which is your target shelter from your area, what are you allowed to take to the shelter, who is your district chair, all of that kind of information was available to residents, and variations of that can be done in the St. Vincent situation. I trust it is being done, and I certainly wish my colleagues in St. Vincent and the Grenadines well, because we're all in this together. We're one Caribbean, you're the original Caribbean man, and we're all together trying to make the best of a very difficult situation. This is a resilient region, we're resilient people, but more particularly, Julian, we are innovative and creative people, and we are courageous people. And I sit here tonight in the hope and in the belief that we are going to get through this with the effort of everyone, but it's going to take some discipline, it's going to take some maturity, it's going to take some leadership and coordination, and it's going to take some sincere commitment. This is not the time for any form of posturing in terms of saying we're helping people, but we're really posturing. This is not the time for it.
Talk about helping, Frankie. Let me go back to Atiba Williams, who is in New York. Atiba, what would you say are the priority items that your group across North America and Europe are being expected to send off to St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
Well, we have sent off over like 70,000 masks to help with the because we were dealing with COVID and we had the pending volcano, so we had sent masks and sanitizers and stuff like that. But what we are focusing now, we are focusing on cots for the shelters. We're focusing on blankets. We're focusing on water tanks for the clean water. Focusing on buckets, toiletries and stuff like that, sanitary stuff for the ladies, and food stuff and new clothing. Those are basically the main items that we're focusing on to send off.
So we've got a lot of stuff already coming. You say, in fact, some stuff will be there in another 10 days, etc. But let me ask you about the personal reaction to what happened or what is happening in St. Vincent?
Well, it like every disaster that hit our homeland, well, people are in tears up here. They have not slept. I know from our relief group and other groups, organizations here, we haven't slept since Friday, and trying to just mobilize effort. People, just heartbroken, but the response and that we are getting is very, very positive. Everybody's on board. We have people from different diaspora regions, Jamaica, Haiti, Guyana, Trinidad. Everyone is reaching out for help. So it's a real, not just a Caribbean unity in the Caribbean also out here in the diaspora are responding tremendously, and Vincentians are putting everything aside and just doing it for St. Vincent the Grenadines in this time of need. Because, like I say, St. Vincent is hit right now with three prongs. We had the dengue fever, COVID, and now the volcano. So we responding tremendously and trying to get the message out for everybody. Make a great appeal, whether monetary, whether in goods or whatever it is. Just contact us. All the information will be out. Like I say, we're doing a big relief drive next week Saturday at the Friends of Crown Heights, 671 Prospect Place here in Brooklyn. And another folks in Canada and England, they're doing this stuff also. And it's gonna be a big relief. And stuff has been coming in already. And there's a lot of stuff that we're trying to put. We're trying to get emergency shipment in. When I say emergency shipment, we're working on behind the scenes right now to get the governor of New York to assist us in getting a state or military plane to take the supplies in, given the visibility and stuff like that. The bad visibility right now in the region. So a military plane, we feverishly working on that, and we are confident that we get it to take the supplies in within the next week or so.
That is very, very good to hear. I'm sure that's music to the ears of somebody like Vanette over there in Kingstown.
I wanted to jump in to just say that what we've been hearing from people on the ground, where there are a lot of children in shelters, is things like baby supplies, so diapers, food for children, Nestum, the milk, for children to eat, and also things like little toys for the toddlers and the little ones who are there to occupy themselves, because you're trying to give them a sense of normalcy. I can only imagine how unsettling it is. It's unsettling for me. I can't fathom how a child would adjust to just being uprooted and removed from home. But some of the things, if you could factor in items for babies, children of tender years, food stuff and diapers and that sort of thing, that would be very much appreciated, as far as my information on the ground from the shelter's perspective is concerned.
Excellent. So here's a challenge for Dougie. Since you're in radio, you got 30 seconds.
Julian, listen to me. We have been communicating. I must say that the National Broadcasting Corporation has been very good in coordinating with all the radio stations and disseminating the information, and that we got the information out. And that I know for sure. I just want to say thank you very much to Atiba, Fitzhuggins, and all the others. I know that they will do their job in getting relief in. I just really hope that prior to all of this, when we had all the warnings, a lot of things, preparations for the shelters were not in place, and it made persons lose some form of confidence when they are displaced in the way that they are. And our friend in Barbados, who was in Montserrat, would understand. And I think he tried to address it, but he doesn't want to be as direct as I am. But this could have been avoided. But I know we would have to. I do not envy the government and the Prime Minister, because he has to deal, he has a lot on his plate. This will not be easy. But we, St. Vincent, home of the blessed, and we will get through.
Tyrone forever. Thank you very much there, all of you, whether you're in Kingstown, St. Vincent, Bridgetown, Barbados, or of course in New York as well. Thank you very much for joining us in this special session. To the rescue, CARICOM rallying for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I'm Julian Rogers in Kingston, Jamaica.